When we think of all the best mothers, or the best idea of motherhood, who comes to mind? Is it Norman Bates' mother? Is it Mommy Dearest? Is it the mother from Carrie? Or is it Beulah, Cinderella's mother? Or is it the mother from the girl in Tangled? Who is the mother par excellence? And we say, well, why would you pick all those mothers as the greatest mothers? Well, when we listen to this reading today from Isaiah, now recall, this is the same Isaiah who oftentimes will be very critical of the Israelites, who are us. And he will prophesy what God is saying through him, and it can be very harsh. So this is kind of out of character for him. But what it says is, Zion said, "The Lord has forsaken me. My Lord has forgotten me." How real is that? I mean, how many of us have felt at some point, God doesn't even hear what I'm saying, or God isn't home right now? Or in the words of a seminarian talking about hope, he says, hope is the gift that God gives us that keeps us going when we believe that Jesus is asleep. I mean, how many times have we felt that way? That there is no God listening to me. So this is real. This is in the Bible here. That people felt like this. And what is the response? Can a mother forget her infant? Be without tenderness for the child of her womb. In other words, God is like a mother. And what mother can forget her infant or her child in the womb? Now we might say in our day and age, we know there are mothers like that. Certainly we wouldn't have the atrocity of abortion if that were not the case. And he must have had this in his day and time too, because he goes on to say then, even should she forget, because she's human and flawed, I will never forget you. This is the type of image that we have for our God. The image of a mother par excellence. The mother that will not forget the child, regardless of what happens. And so the reason I bring that up, when we think of motherhood, do we think of Psycho, or do we think of Carrie, or Mommy Dearest, or all these horrible mothers in the movies? Because some people have that image of this mother. Some people have that image of God. That God is like a tricky little Loki-like God that just tries to trip us up. Or he's putting stumbling blocks in front of us, or he afflicts us with all these things. And we forget the mother who cannot forget the infant in the womb. There was an article I saw just the other day, and the headline read, "Survey says people who believe in hell live more miserable lives." People who believe in hell live more miserable lives. Now you know that's begging me to just read the whole thing. And so they did a survey, and this is how the survey was done. It's very deceptive if you just read the headline and move on. In the survey, it was people who believed only in heaven and how they felt about their life and whether they felt they had a lot of joy and everything else. And certainly they did. They only believe in heaven. There's no hell. And the other end was people who only believe in hell. Only. So there is no heaven. They only believe in hell. And they remarked in the survey that their lives were miserable and that they had no joy. Well, duh. If you only believe in hell, whose life wouldn't be miserable? There's no hope of anything better. So eat, drink, and be merry, because tomorrow we're going to hell. So let's enjoy it while we can. So that's very deceptive, as opposed to those who believe in heaven and hell. We have to be real here, folks. We can't just believe in heaven and say there's no, recompense for anything evil that I do. We don't have to believe in bacteria either, but we can still die of an infection. And so I think our mindset has to be not one of that only believes in hell, like looking at God as the mother, as one of those horrible mothers, but the one that believes in heaven, that God is trying to get us all into heaven. And he's bending over backwards to do this, but there is such a thing as hell. And so there will be those among us who stray. especially usually from the late teenage years up into the 20s, many people will leave the church. It's statistics. It happens. And many times they come back when they're ready to get married, or they're baptizing children, or the children are of school age. Whatever reason, some never come back. Some might wait till the middle of their life to come back. And we worry so much about that. And I've never heard so much angst among parents when their children do this. But we should know that our God is a God of hope. Can the mother forget her infant even when they stray far away from the home? You know, you've heard these stories of men and women who are in prison, and their mothers visit them religiously. There's some connection there that even if they disappoint, even if they fall far away, there's some connection there, and that's the connection that our God has. Regardless of how far we stray, we are never too far away from the mother. We are never too far away from home. And so when we begin thinking about life and death, it can be a very depressing thing. That we're looking forward to death like someone who is looking forward to hell. And that's not how it's supposed to be. Death is a homecoming. Death is the doorway to eternal life. But sometimes I think we have this trepidation because it's an unknown to us, or it's strange, or we're fearful of this. And so I want to talk about that just a little bit today to hopefully allay some of these fears. You see, if you have lived a life of gluttony, and I mean, let's say, you know, we've smoked to excess, we drank to excess, we eat to excess, all these things that are horrible for our health, and then in the middle of our life we decide we want to do a decathlon. We just decide. We are going to have to purge ourselves of a lot of stuff. We're going to have to quit all those bad habits. We're going to have to get into shape. We're going to have to eat right. We're going to have to do all those things that we were supposed to do from the beginning. We have a name for that. That's purgatory. So God wants so much that, as St. John says in his gospel, that none of his little ones should be lost, but that they should be raised up on the last day. And so many of us have spent all of our living days stocking up our silos and our storage units and making sure we're so secure in this life, making sure I'm all secure that regardless of what happens, I'll be okay. And as we do that, we kind of forget the spiritual life. So we have nothing in that bank. We have nothing invested there. And then all of a sudden death comes and it's too late. We're not ready for that. It's why we go into Lent in a certain way. As we celebrate these next 40 days of Lent, and I do say celebrate, as we celebrate these 40 days of Lent, it is a preparation for the crucifixion. And a crucifixion that results in resurrection. It should bring to our minds and our hearts, okay, I've stocked up everything here in this world, now what have I stocked up in the next? And so we take these 40 days in order to prepare ourselves for death. But God is even bigger than that. Because if we say someone dies suddenly without making the proper preparations, we have something called purgatory. And purgatory is not the journey to hell. There's only one way in purgatory, and that's the journey to God. But because we've gluttoned ourselves during this life, as we enter into purgation, we have to get rid of all that stuff. We have to get in shape for the decathlon. So that when we finally meet God, we are in the condition that he always wanted us to be in. We have the ability to purge those things. But it is in our best interest if we start that purging now. And so as we enter into the Lenten season, that's what we're doing. We're taking a step back from all the material things that we've secured ourselves with, and now we look toward our spiritual investment. It's a getting in shape for the crucifixion that we all will one day experience, and the resurrection that believes not just in a hell, but in a heaven as well. So I would ask you, if you haven't thought of your Lenten sacrifice already, here's a great Lenten sacrifice for you. Bring someone to Mass. So during the Sunday Masses in Lent, Father Wayne and I have agreed we're going to preach on the sacraments. So every Sunday will be a new sacrament. Now next week I'm preaching on baptism. And I know that all the Masses have that because I'm preaching all the Masses next Sunday. So you're going to get the same message. So bring someone to Mass. And whether they're Catholic and they've fallen away, or they're not Catholic and they're thinking about the church, or whether they come to Mass every week, they just go to another church, bring them to Mass. And you might have to bribe them. And I'm not above bribing. That's okay. You know, tell them you're going to take them out after Mass. You go to breakfast, or some of you are cooks, you can make them breakfast. And what do you talk about? You talk about what happened here that might not happen other places. Or what happens other places that doesn't happen here. Or you talk to them about the homily, because the homilies will all be sacramental. They'll all focus on the sacraments. Now, a little caveat, next weekend I'm also preaching about the Lenten appeal. So when they come in here and they say, yes, that's all they talk about is money all the time, you can say, oh no, not our pastor, no, and defend me. But it's a wonderful opportunity for us to evangelize. And so that is a sacrifice. It is. To ask someone to come to Mass with you who might say no. Even after you bribe them, they might say no. But what a great way not only to prepare our hearts for when we go to meet our Maker and rise with Christ, but maybe to save a soul along the way. To bring someone back to the church who might not come otherwise. You know, as we enter into our baptism at the beginning of our Christian life, that baptismal font is supposed to represent the tomb. It represents the tomb. And so just as Jesus descends into the abode of the dead, so we descend into the baptismal font with him. But we also rise with him on the other side. We are a church that believes in hell. We do believe that. But we much more put our faith in heaven because of the God who, like a mother, cannot forget her infant, doesn't want to forget the infant, and just wants us to be with him for eternity.